Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, coming to you live from the Singapore FinTech Festival. And joining me for this segment, we have Lionel Wong. He's Executive Director at Gprnt. We're here to discuss ESG reporting for SMEs and corporates. It is great to have you with us, Lionel. Welcome to TradeTalks.
Good morning.
All right, let's talk about the global push for ESG compliance. Is this something that is nice to have or something that companies need to think about having?
This is something that's nice to have. Well, I think it's something that companies today think about having to do.
Right.
And I think there's a spectrum of companies that exist today. There's the larger ones, there's the smaller ones. Smaller ones tend to be in the value chains or supply chains of the larger ones. Larger ones are subject to mandatory requirements typically, or investor pressures, or even reputational issues when it comes to sustainability. And those are things that they need to counteract and stay abreast of. But the challenge that they face is this. When it comes to reporting their own sustainability performances and emissions footprints, they need the data from the smaller guys. And so where we come in is the MES started a thing called Project Gprnt that aspired to harness technology to aid the smaller businesses that to report data and provide the data to the larger firms so that there's completeness that bridges the data gap.
All right, let's talk about addressing the accessibility challenge too.
The accessibility challenge, yeah. So when it comes to tools and solutions and getting smaller businesses for them to get started on sustainability, it's very challenging. There's a lot of inertia. There's not a lot of incentive. There's high costs. There's a very fragmented landscape of solutions and frameworks, and all of that means, net that a small business wants to get started on sustainability, but it just doesn't know where to start. Right? It is a paradox of choice. So how do we try to solve that? We think about how can we aggregate the ecosystem into a centralized kind of platform and make that available to solutions, make those solutions available to reporting entities, smaller businesses, and more important that how do we build solutions that also enable them to get started on reporting seamlessly and ideally with automation as much as possible. So the way that we do it in Singapore is we have quite a strong digital backbone when it comes to things like SingPass that allows you to go in, pull your data from government repositories, and then synthesize that into output. So we take those same capabilities and apply that to sustainability. So you get started with reporting, and then you get an ecosystem of solutions played back to you, ideally curated to your specific needs and specific contexts.
What about the silent cost of non-compliance?
Well, when it comes to smaller businesses, there is a tremendous silent cost of non-compliance because for smaller businesses, there's already a lot of inertia. What is sustainability? Why should I be in this space? Right? But when you look across at your peers, right, some of them are getting started on sustainability. There's already very fundamentally an element of brand differentiation. But more than that, these guys, if they don't get started on sustainability, they're getting excluded from supply chains. They're getting excluded from green procurement conversations. They are facing increasing pressures from larger corporates and financial institutions who say, if you don't give me your data, it's very difficult for me to have a conversation with you going forward. Right? So all of these factors, they are not mandatory in nature in the sense that we don't expect political administrations or governments to impose mandatory requirements on SMEs to get started on sustainability because there's a cost tied to that. But they are facing a lot of implicit pressures for them to get mobilized, and that only exacerbates the issue, I think, when it comes to, look, how do I get started then?
What about leveraging tech innovations to help foster compliance reporting?
So we live in a world today where there's a lot of generative AI, and there's much talk about how can we harness that, and then that's paired again with the responsible use of generative AI and the consumption that it entails. But I think stepping away from that, there are fundamental technologies that already exist and have existed for the past 10, 20 years that can be applied to sustainability relatively simply. If you think about it from a small business standpoint, when it comes to sustainability reporting, what are they trying to do? They're trying to take their invoices and bills, sit down with somebody or by themselves and figure out how does this compute into emissions, right? All we're just trying to do is to digitize that whole process and get them started, right? So all the things like OCR, for instance, or machine learning, right, or just data API integrations. These are technologies that don't require generative AI per se, but can be applied to a sustainability use case. And so in that sense, it allows businesses to disrupt today the sustainability reporting process.
All right, Lionel, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me for the Singapore FinTech Fest. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.